But the other one of my big bugbears is the issue of net zero. And the Prime Minister last week making a really bold new statement, new direction for the government. And some people have been very enthusiastic about it in one part of his party. But actually, a lot of people have been very concerned about it. And later in the show, we're going to be talking to John Caldwell, a significant donor to the Conservative Party, with his views, because it seems that he's saying he's not going to donate any more to the party if that's the direction of travel of the Prime Minister. Well, there is actually a poll out today that seems to indicate that Mr. Caldwell may be going down the wrong track, because the Conservatives are up 5 on the back of the Prime Minister's shift on the issue of net zero. Now, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by Laurie Laybourn-Langton, who's an economist and environmental policy researcher, to talk about this. Laurie, thanks for being with us. So this is it's a really significant moment in the net zero debate. I've been very outspoken. I think it's the wrong thing at the wrong price and the wrong time frame. I'm very concerned that actually it's going to send our jobs and money abroad, and that actually ordinary families up and down the country cannot afford it. And the Prime Minister, finally, he's basically admitted that is the case. But, of course, net zero is written into law, isn't it? In the UK, you've got the Climate Change Act of 2008, and then you've got the amendment to that in 2019/20, after Theresa May. So the Prime Minister's probably going to face lots of legal challenges coming in all directions from those who think he's got this completely wrong.
Yeah, he probably will. I think he should also face legal challenges from people who want Britain's industry to return. So I got a cab over here. It was a black cab. It was one of the electric ones, right? That cab was made in Coventry, I think, but it was produced by a Chinese company called Geely. I mean, there's then a shell company that does the actual cab building. I think that's ridiculous. Two things are going on there. One, electric vehicles are increasingly being brought in globally. This is a new wave. It's not something that's been pushed down our throats. Private companies, automotive companies, want us to have electric vehicles, right? In the same way that companies benefited when we moved from horses to cars in the first place. The second thing that's happening is China is winning those opportunities, per the black cab example. I think it is outrageous that black cabs in London are made by a Chinese company. So what
and don't get me wrong, I've got an electric car myself, and yes, I love it. You know, I'm not a great fan of noise, so for me that suits. My issue is it's the cost of them, and the reason that the reason the Chinese cars are so much cheaper is because they've got a much lower energy cost, because they're getting their energy, their electricity from coal-fired generating power stations, of which they're building 200 of them as we speak.
But they are also installing more renewables capacity per month than most Western countries are installing over a course of years. The other reason why they're cheap is because of subsidy from Beijing, right? So we need to understand here that another reason why European EVs are more expensive is because, and I'm going to be completely honest here, a lot of countries in the West, including the UK, also including the major European manufacturing companies like Germany, they didn't anticipate this opportunity fast enough. So some car companies are playing catch-up, right? We need all we can do to ensure that they catch up quicker.
Yeah, but here's the issue. But here's the issue, is that the government's having to give huge subsidies. It's given them to BMW, to Jaguar Land Rover, hundreds and hundreds of millions of our cash. It's not government money, it's our cash. And the number of jobs employed in that process is much, much less in the traditional combustion engine process. So the truth is that this rush to net zero is costing hundreds of thousands of jobs in the automotive sector alone, either directly or indirectly.
Where have you got the figure from? Because the government's independent advisors have made it very clear that they think that the net impact on jobs, so that's, just to be totally clear, we might lose some jobs in net zero, but we'll also gain some from all the new things that are made and different processes. So the net gain, as a net gain, is between 135 and as much as 750,000 jobs. There's a huge amount to be done. And I tell you what, there's the maximum number, the most jobs that we could get from going towards net zero are the ones where instead of a Chinese company being the one that makes the London EV back cab, it becomes a British company. I want a Unijack on top of the wind turbines. I want a Unijack stamped on the insulation that we're putting in people's
Well, it's
homes.
interesting. So you talk about where does the numbers come from. So I looked at the Office for National Statistics. Their data for last year shows that less than 1% of all jobs in the United Kingdom are green jobs. Less than 1%. It's less than 2% of GDP. We've all been promised all these green jobs, but lots of people are entitled to ask, where are they and what's the price? And last week I was down in Port Talbot talking to union leaders at the steel plant. Thousands and thousands of great, highly skilled manufacturing steel jobs are being slain on the altar of net zero, just binned.
Well, they're not, one of the biggest factors that got in the way of that led to the loss of jobs in industry in this country is that successive governments, Tory and Labour, did not invest in homegrown British capacity, right? We are now in a situation globally, whether we like it or not, there's nothing we can do to resist this, where industry is moving towards renewables, to electric vehicles and so on. China is an example of that, the US is an example of that, EU is an example of that. Irrespective of climate change, the question is whether we capitalise on that and bring jobs here. The complaint to the government, if there's only 1% of the jobs are green jobs, is that they haven't done enough to bring them here. Because there are green jobs in the US.
The reason for that is we've got the most expensive electricity in the G20, as I understand. Laurie, thank you so much. We must get you back. I've so much to talk about on this issue.